Thank you so much, doctor. That was such great information. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure, I, as well as many people, are going to put that to great use. Before we open up our live Q&A, we'd like to make sure that everybody knows how to connect with you. You actually just shared that QR code, which is very helpful. Also, how to buy your book, your latest book, as well as I believe you have something like 20 books. So we'd like to see how they can get those books from you.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to show it on our website. Okay. So they're available on the Real Truth, therealtruth.com, or therealtruthabout.health.com. So next we're going to be, okay, so we're going to be opening up for Q&A. For those of you that are not familiar with how to do this, first of all, we're not going to be taking questions from the chat. We're going to be raising hands in the participant window. So what you're going to need to do if you're a participant and you have a question is you're going to go to the bottom of your Zoom screen, and toward the right, you'll see a reactions button. You're going to click on that, and then you're going to click raise hand. We're going to do our best to select questions based on the order in which they were received. We will, when it's your turn, we'll unmute you. We'll prompt you to state your name, where you're from, and to ask your question. We ask that everyone keep their questions brief and on topic. We will then mute you after you've asked your question. In order to give everyone a chance to get their question answered, we won't be taking follow-up questions. So let's go ahead and get started. I see we have got a number of hands raised. So the first one is going to be Kathy Sabo. You're going to state your name, where you're from, and ask your question.
Well, hi, my name is Kathy Sabo, and I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. Hi, Dr. Barnard.
Hi there, Kathy.
Hi, I'm hypothyroid. And when you talked about soy, boy, I've heard that for people who are hypothyroid, that soy is not good for us. Why is that?
Researchers have been investigating that, and the evidence for it really turns out to be rather weak. So we no longer encourage people with hypothyroidism to avoid soy. However, let me mention some other research that has gone kind of along the same lines that has given us a pathway that may be fruitful. Let me say quickly, I think that we need more research on diet and hypothyroidism. Don't cancel your doctor's appointment, because if you're on thyroid supplementation, you want to continue to work with your endocrinologist to make sure your levels are correct. That said, at the Adventist Health Study 2, researchers looked at hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and also looked at hyperthyroidism, Graves' disease. And they looked at dietary patterns. And what they found was amazing. They found that those people who followed completely plant-based diets, no dairy, no meat, had the lowest prevalence of hypothyroidism. And the group that had the highest, maybe surprisingly enough, was the dairy eaters, the people eating the most dairy products, the like lacto-ovo vegetarians eating not meat, but eating a lot of dairy. They did the worst. And then when it came to hyperthyroidism, now, once again, the vegans had the least, but the people who had the most were the omnivores, having dairy and meat. What we think is happening, as you know, hypothyroidism is autoimmune. So you consume a product like dairy protein, and your body reacts to that dairy protein by creating antibodies to the protein, which then turn around and attack your thyroid, and they can shut the thyroid off. Or if they attack the part of the thyroid that is controlling its action, it can't shut off and you end up hyperthyroid. That's, in a simple-minded way, that's the mechanism. So what am I suggesting? I'm suggesting that you may wish to try a completely low-fat vegan diet, no animal products at all, zero. Keep oils really, really low, and see over time. Give it 2-3 months and see what happens. We have seen a great many anecdotal cases, individual cases, where the hypothyroidism went into complete remission. The thing that we do not know is this the rule? Does this happen to a lot of people or just some? But there are no reasons not to follow this diet, and I'd encourage you to give it a try. But continue to let your doctor know you're doing it. Let your doctor get monitor you as you go along. So, Kathy, thank you so much for your question. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, doctor. Our next question is coming from Stephen Shore. Stephen, please state your name, where you're from, and state your question.
Stephen, I'm from Syosset. Dr. Barnard, if someone is eating a plant-based diet with no fat, can they still have a blood sugar that's like 110, 115? And what do they do about it if they're already eating a no-fat, whole food, plant-based diet and they have a 110 blood sugar?
Okay, all right, wonderful question. First of all, I saw in the chat, somebody was asking, which book are we talking about? Whether it's thyroid or diabetes, the book is called Your Body in Balance. These topics are covered in some detail there, including both diabetes type 1 and type 2. Okay, so let's say a person is trying to bring their blood sugar down, and you saw my little purple oval, and you notice it was filled with fat, so you take the animal products out of your diet. No animal fat, great. You take the oils out of your diet, there's not much vegetable oils, great. For most people, that solves the problem. If a person is still running a higher blood sugar than they would want to, the first step, of course, is to kind of go back to our menu and make sure that we're really following it. So if a person says, oh, really? Did you mean avocado? Did you mean peanut butter? Those are delicious foods, but they are loaded with fat. Okay, so we remove those. And for most people, you'll see the blood sugar continuing to come down because insulin sensitivity has improved. The next thing you can do, though, is to modify what is left. Back in the 1980s, Dr. David Jenkins invented the glycemic index, which simply says things instead of white bread have rye or pumpernickel, because it raises the blood sugar much less aggressively. And so favoring low glycemic index foods is a good idea. What are they? Fruit, it's sweet, but it's low GI for the most part. Beans, you can't do better. So focusing on those foods is often a good idea. And then finally, I should say that there are some folks, if they've had diabetes for a long period of time, what they'll discover is everybody gets kind of a different result. If the pancreatic beta cells have been beaten up by diabetes over the decades, their blood sugar may come down, but may still be higher than you would want it to be. In that case, you work with your caregiver and you just see where you want to go with it. But maybe the last thing I should also say is if you lace up your sneakers, what are your muscles using for fuel? They use glucose. Your blood sugar is going to come down.
Great. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
doctor.
Good question.
Okay, thank you. So our next question is coming from Trudy Lewis. Trudy, go ahead and state your name, where you're from, and ask your question.
Hi, good morning. My name is Trudy Lewis. I'm from Trinidad, West Indies. My question is, as it pertains to like endometriosis and fibroid, I got that you're saying that we should like do a whole food, plant-based or vegan diet. But do you recommend any type of fasting, or should the meals be three times a day? That's the question. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Trudy, thank you for that question. The research that we did not include fasting. It didn't include meal timing. Now, there are some people who do this, where they'll have one large meal per day, or maybe two, a large breakfast, a pretty large lunch, and they may not eat then the rest of the day until the next morning. There's no reason not to do that. You can do that if you wish, but that's not what we did. What we found was that the hormones could be controlled by eating any time of day you want it, but just the quality of what people ate was no animal products, oils very low, and including the soybeans.
Great. Thank you very much. Our next question is coming from Michelle Suchensky. Michelle, go ahead and state your name. Make sure I said it correctly, where you're from, and state your question.
Sure. Hi, Dr. Barnard. I'm Michelle Suchensky from Alexandria, Virginia. And my question is about vegan versus raw vegan for...
Sorry, Michelle, we lost your audio. If you can take care of that, we'll come back to you. We'll try you again.
Well, I'll tell you what, it sounds like the Cooked Food Council must have cut her off in mid-question. So Michelle, first of all, hi, thank you for calling in, and you're asking about raw foods. Let me just respond to that directly.
Sure.
First of all, I think raw foods are great. You have to believe that our species did not evolve with sterno. So we were eating raw things for much of our sojourn on Earth. But here's the issue that we have is that we aren't really entirely sure what those foods were. Because human beings evolved in Africa, probably Eastern Africa. And a lot of the foods that people are eating nowadays, the tomato sauce on your pizza, the peanuts and so forth, or potatoes, those are North American foods or Central American foods in some cases. And human beings didn't taste them until people arrived in the Americas. So what were the foods that were indigenous to Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, these kinds of areas? And we don't really know. So my thought is, we eat fruits. Obviously, fruits are terrific raw. Many vegetables are terrific raw. You can have spinach cooked. You can have spinach raw. You can have a cucumber cooked. You can have it raw, fine. With cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and so forth, they tend not to, the cruciferous vegetables tend not to be very digestible unless you really cook them. So I suggest cooking them until they're soft if you have any kind of problems with them. Grains, you can't eat a grain that's raw unless you sprout it, in which case you can eat lots of it. Same with beans. Okay, so Michelle, you were asking raw versus vegan for hormonal balance. Raw would be fine. We haven't done a study to see if raw is better. In the 84 women that were in our study, the rules were vegan diet, cooked or raw, keep oils really low, half cup soybeans a day. If you want to do raw, you can do it. Don't eat raw soybeans. You want to make sure that you could sprout them, or you could eat soybean products. But see what happens. Let me know how you do.
All right, great. Thank you. Our next question is coming from Ali D. Ali D, state your name, where you're from, and your question.
Yeah, I've had critical vitamin D for years, from undetectable to 7 to 13. I take 120,000 international units per week, as in 50,000 in a prescription and then 10,000 daily. And I feel like maybe my bones are deteriorating because my bones in my legs hurt when I go to bed at night. And I've noticed a gait change where I drag one leg and the other leg kind of swings out. And I'm worried that maybe I've done permanent damage to my bones, and what I could do to get it higher.
Okay. Well, first of all, Ali, I'm sorry. Thank you for calling. Thank you for watching the program. And I'm sorry you're dealing with this issue. This is an individual issue that sounds important and is something that I would strongly encourage you to see. I'm sure you're doing this already, but if you're not, talk to your endocrinologist about what you're doing. Follow your endocrinologist's advice. I don't think I or anybody participating in this would be giving you individual advice on something like that. Now, you might say, well, I talked to my endocrinologist, and the endocrinologist didn't really have the answer for me. In a number of cases, you have to have a second opinion or a third opinion. And if you've got kind of a tricky issue where you're not getting the answers you need, what I encourage you to do is to look at a major medical center, look at the Department of Endocrinology and who's the head of it, and call there, and you're going to get the most experienced person, or let them know your condition so you get a person who specializes in what you need. So don't hesitate to get a second or even third opinion so that you're getting the care that you need.
Great advice, doctor. All right, so it looks like we have Kathy Sabo again, and I'm going to unmute her and let her go ahead and ask her question.
Oh, I'm happy to be back. Thank you. So this question is about hormones. I had a hysterectomy about 7 years ago, and I think I had this aha moment that once upon a time I heard someone talking about something called sarcopenia, and I didn't know what it was. So I Googled it, and I read that sarcopenia is where you've got this big fat cap on your muscles instead of muscle in your body. So I had been jiggling my thigh a lot and thinking, gosh, I got a lot of fat. And I'm wondering if sarcopenia, or this large fat cap, now I know that I'm not as physically active, but does it have anything to do with the hormones that I've lost as a result of having a hysterectomy?
Well, first of all, it's a terrific question. Sarcopenia, which really what it really refers to is a loss of muscle mass, as you've been describing. It's actually really, really common, and it's a common thing in men and women, perhaps somewhat more in women. And it hits us as we age, and you do see it particularly with older folks. And the naive initial response to it that doctors would sometimes prescribe is you need to load up on a whole lot of protein, eat much more protein, go out and get a big steak, and that's going to counter it. Well, feeding more protein in some cases may have sort of a marginal effect on it. But the problem is that you're setting up a person for an even higher risk of cardiovascular disease by choosing that source. So you do need protein in your diet, and the protein, of course, should come from beans and grains and vegetables, and you can get all the protein you need from plant sources, better for you than protein from animal sources. And would HRT be part of it? We encourage people, and frankly, all practitioners encourage women using HRT to get off of it. Because the concern is that while you might benefit from it or feel some benefit over the short run with regard to vasomotor symptoms, as time goes on, the risk of breast cancer or other forms of serious illness accumulate the longer a woman is on it. So most all doctors who are prescribing it, after a number of years, you start saying, we've got to get you off of this. And that's really good advice. Okay, I want to just say a big thank you once again to the organizers. Thank you so much for including me. I really appreciate it. I appreciate so much all that you do. And I look forward to continuing to forward this effort and see what we can do to change not just our own health, but the health of the communities in which we live.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Doctor, for your presentation and your time. We're just going to quickly unmute the audience so they can give their own little thanks to you. So if we can take care of that. Everyone, you can.
Thank you, Dr. Barnard.
Thank you, Dr. Barnard. I hope to see you Tuesday.
Thank you.
All right.